need someone to talk to and you don't know what to do, call us 214-4400 when you're feeling all alone and they turn their back on you. Call us 214-4400. Call us 214-4400. Call us 214-4400. Call us.
Welcome to the Kind Counseling Podcast. It's me, Dania Roberts, again. All right, with another episode. I'm joined by my co-host, you still going by Big Al? Big Al.
What's up, man?
Al coming in from Virginia. We appreciate you, man. And of course, the lovely Dania Roberts. And how you guys doing today?
Doing good. Doing good. What's the weather like in VA today?
Amazing. It's 72 degrees outside right now.
72?
Wow.
Okay. All right.
Nice.
Good. So listen, all right. So we got a special guest today. Before I just want to give a little introduction. Before we have Miss Asiyah Grant. She's a retired civil engineer who was struck by a drunk driver while jogging on February 1st, 2014. At the time, she lived in Tortola, British Virgin Islands, and she became famous from that day forward, known in Tortola as the girl run down on Zion Hill. She's been through extensive cognitive and behavioral therapy to regain her sense of self and her memory. She's now classified as permanently disabled, but she's managed to still live a fulfilling life. She completed a TEDx talk in 2018, and she plans on writing a memoir to continue sharing her story of recovery with others. So let's welcome Miss Asiyah Grant.
Woo!
Right.
Welcome, Asiyah. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, Asiyah, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I can tell you I've been so excited since you asked me to do this podcast. It's been countdown to March 1st.
Good.
I had on my face since 8 a.m. I've been waiting for this.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Well,
That's good to hear.
We're glad that you made it.
Mm-hmm.
So today, obviously, we're going to talk about the traumatic brain injury that you suffered, right? And I just before I just jump in, okay, Zoom's not allowing me to do that. Okay, so tell us a little bit about what your life was like before this injury happened to you.
Well, I am the firstborn, so I was the first. I was like the pioneering child. So I did everything different. I said, I'm going to be an engineer, not knowing what an engineer was. I'm going to travel all over the country. So I got a job with the Federal Highway Administration, which allowed me to do that. So I lived on the East Coast, West Coast, North, and South, and I had to drive. So I'm very adventurous. And so when the opportunity came and I went on vacation in the British Virgin Islands, I loved it. So I went back another birthday. And the guy who I met the first time, he kind of showed an interest and asked me to marry him. So I got everything, stopped what I was doing in America and moved down to the British Virgin Islands. So I've never been afraid to try something new. So that's like dogged determination would be me.
Okay.
So, in another country, you can't transfer all your titles. I was a civil engineer in America, but in the British Virgin Islands, a British system, it's good that I am an engineer, but I had to figure out how to translate. There's no bridges in Torture, so I can't use that.
Really?
I had to find something close, and that was the BVI Ports Authority, British Virgin Islands Ports Authority. And I was the engineer for the ports. So I enjoyed that. They follow different guidelines, rules, and regulations. It's usually following the law, but a lot of times, people follow who's in power. So I had to deal with a lot of that, but that's how it is. But so I say all that to say that I have always been one to use my skill set and just go and move forward and try something new. So I took my injury as well. This is trying a whole lot of new because I didn't even know who it was after I got hit by a car. I didn't even know who the guy who was being so nice to me in the hospital room was, and he was my husband. I thought he was my father. I was like, who is this nice man? Are you my dad? And that was the first indication that something is wrong.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, I was in a coma for 3 weeks. That's definitely something wrong. But waking up and not even recognizing my husband was a real indication that there was that aside from the physical injury that I had to also deal with memory loss, which was hard. And on that day, I happened to have been airlifted out of Tortola and went to Broward County, Florida to recover because we don't have in the British Virgin Islands any doctors equipped with my injury to handle my injury. So after coming out of a coma, the 3 weeks afterwards, and having to get the discharge to then be airlifted to NYU Medical in New York, I couldn't even sign the exit papers at the hospital. I didn't know how to sign my own name. I knew that I was left-handed. Picked up the pen with my left hand to try, but I couldn't even get squiggly lines out of my hand. Like what to do with, or what to do, but my brain couldn't figure it out. So no connections were working because of my frontal lobe injury. I was hit right here. And that is the frontal lobe on the right side, which is in charge of all of my motor skills. The writing and just basic communication. So all of that, knowing that I'm a civil engineer and not being able to even write my own name. Then I learned after a while, I looked, you get all the subscriptions to magazines. I picked up an Essence magazine and saw words, and then I realized I didn't know how to read anymore.
Wow.
So at age 40, I couldn't read, I couldn't write, and I had paralysis on my right side. So I had to walk with a cane. I had to relearn how to walk, actually. And that's what I was able to accomplish at Rusk Rehabilitation. It's NYU Rusk Rehabilitation Center in Manhattan. And I credit them to all of the recovery that you see before you take. I had to learn the activities of daily living, just learning how to cook, where you have to turn on the stove first. You have to put the water in the pot to boil water, like all of the basics. It makes more. Like I knew cooking was a process, but the 1, 2, 3s of it, I couldn't understand. And so reading a recipe when you can't read is impossible. So either watch people do it, remember it, or I had to figure out, you got to teach me to read again. So all of that Rusk helped me do. And it wasn't a lot of time before it flooded back into my mind. But they say, you remember the saying, don't use it, you lose it.
Right.
If I didn't realize or pay attention to the fact that I couldn't read, I would have not been able to read. Because I lost that part of my brain that needed to recover. It just would have gone to the wayside. So.
Yeah. Asiyah, your story sounds a little bit like just hearing you talking about not remembering who your husband was. Now, there was a movie that came out a few years ago called The Vow with Rachel McAdams and Channing Tatum. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's also an incident where she was in a car accident and she lost her memory and couldn't remember who her husband was. It sounds kind of similar to your story, but I wonder if you could just rewind just a little bit and tell us if you remember, like, what were you doing the day of the accident? Do you remember where you were hit from? Did you see a car coming towards you? Like, could you kind of just walk us through what was going on that day before the accident? Do you have memory of that?
I have a memory of what would it have been? Would have been January 31st, preparing to go jogging with my coworker at 5:30 in the morning, and telling my husband, I'm going to go jogging with my coworker, and later on, I'm going to get on a ferry to go over to Virgin Gorda for this Rotary inauguration.
You're listening to the Kind Counseling Podcast. Feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now back to the show.
So I had the whole day planned out, and the only thing I remember of that day is that it happened after the. I don't remember being hit. I was told later that I was jogging up a hill and was hit from behind from a drunk driver. And the young lady who was jogging with me, I caught up to her 2 years afterwards. She left the island because the incident traumatized her so much. And I was searching for her, found her, and she told me that the car she was on the outside of me, and she would have been the person to be hit, but it swerved inside of her, hit me, and saved her. And I think it was God's plan, because I was the healthier person. He had just had a baby. I was already in great shape. And they said that because I had a hairstyle that had a whole bunch of braids on top of my head, it cushioned my brain from worse damage. And so the drunk driver, I was saying, hit me from behind. I went up in the air 30 feet and landed right here. I have no broken bones. I have a broken brain. But nothing. I didn't have to get surgery for anything. I had to get, they had to drain fluids on my brain, but I have no wounds to show for, like, being hit by an actual car.
Wow.
Mark on my head. And I have a trach. You can see that I had to have a tracheotomy when I was in a coma. But there's some road rash here and there, but really, you would tell if I'm walking, because I still have a little limp. It's not as bad as it used to be. But a lot of people said they can't tell unless I point certain things out. I could wear turtlenecks forever. You never see this.
Right.
Makeup
That's
to cover
amazing.
this scar on my forehead.
Which we can't see. I can't see.
Right.
See, I got a question. For the CBT, how long was the actual therapy process? And if you don't mind me asking, we've had issues in the state of Virginia with TBI and people getting actual insurance coverage. How was that process?
Well, so it is interesting you asked that question. I started a new job, and in the British Virgin Islands, you can swipe the box to get insurance that would airlift you, to cover being airlifted anywhere. And this is me checking the box just in case of a rainy day. Well, the rainy day did happen, and I had the coverage to at least airlift me, and also for them to cover, insurance to be able to cover the treatment that I need. But because it was someone else's fault, it's their responsibility. And I was fortunate that Alexa off. Sorry. I was fortunate that saw that I was such a good patient, in that I was trying my hardest to recover and regain all of my faculties that I was able to get a scholarship for some of the treatment that I had to go through, because it took about 2.5 years of treatment before I was able to say, there's no more treatment that I can get, and they couldn't give me any more. I still wanted, I was like, well, is there any way you can fix my ankle? I still can't rotate my right ankle or wiggle my toes. But that is what they call the last distal function. And the brain says it might come back or it might not, but it takes time. So I can't run anymore, but I'm still trying my hardest to get there.
That's awesome.
Asiyah, like you said, you were 40 years old when this happened, so you were in the prime of your life.
Yes.
Do you feel like you were robbed?
I was robbed because when you think about it, I was married. I'm no longer married. I was living my best life with the job I loved. And when the job saw that my category is now permanently disabled, they said, well, we can't employ someone with that distinction. So the job I love was taken from me. My marriage really took a turn for the worse. And in the BVI, they say worser than expected, because although I looked the same, I was not the same. And my husband just couldn't handle seeing the same person, but not getting the same out of me, because he was used to me, managing myself and managing him. And I couldn't do it all. I needed him to help me because I couldn't figure out how to do anything anymore. He would even challenge, well, you could drive, just get in the car. And it's my right leg that has the problem, my right ankle. You need the right ankle to drive.
Right.
But he was like, no, I can't take you to your therapy. You just get in the car and go. And on that day that I got in the car and go, it was a detour. And I had to take myself up a hill, which wasn't what I was prepared to do. I wanted the easy ride on the flat road, straight to town and back home. But when you go up a hill, you need to press the brakes, stop and go up and down a hill. And that was so traumatic that I just stopped driving for good.
Wow.
How long had you guys been married when the accident happened?
We got married in 2010, so 4 years.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can you explain, at this point in time, is there still any residue of, I know you say you don't really remember the accident at all, but is there anything that was kind of left over from that experience? Like, are there any lingering fears or lingering traumas around that incident? Because I know you say you don't, so do you still not drive?
I don't drive, but I can. I have a license and everything. But I was like, well, it's kind of fun being chauffeured everywhere.
That's right.
So my kids.
I sold my car in Tortola. I had a beautiful red Mini Cooper and I just sold it. I was just like, I'm in New York now. I don't really need to drive. But as far as your question, I don't have fear. I never had fear of a car or being in a car or being hit by a car. My fears are my limitations. So because I am slower, it's like I go into this frenzy of trying to get across the street before the time says 0. So those kind of things still bother me. I know I'm not fast anymore. I can't hurry up to get somewhere, because in the whole thought process of hurrying up makes me trip. I'll just stumble because I am more anxious than so I've learned to just take my time, and people have responded and say they don't even see me as being slow. So it's all what's in my head, because I know from whence I came. I was a jogger, I was a fast walker, and well aware of so many things. And a lot of it is my own personal fear. that limits me today.
Okay, well, if it's any consolation to you, I scurry along across the street too and try to beat the light before it changes. So don't feel bad.
I still use the whole put my hand up and walk with a slow limp to get across the street if I need to. It's like, let me just put on this handicap part and just limp across so that they'll feel sorry and just take their time and stop trying to run me down. So I'm not afraid of cars. And what someone told me to do, that I could do some sort of meditation, like transgressive meditation, so that I can remember the day that I was hit. And I was like, well, why would I want to remember such a traumatic time? Like, there's no part of being hit by a car that would be fun to remember. I can't see it. I still know, like, there's pictures of what I looked like when I was brought to the hospital. And my friends, they'll say that that was the scariest time of their life, who saw me in Tortola before I was airlifted out. But I chose not to see what it was I looked like. I saw pictures when I woke up out of a coma, but that's it. So I don't know what it was, and I don't think I need to know. That day was, bits and pieces of it have been filled in from other people. Me having to recount it on my own would probably be very traumatic, and I think my brain knows I don't need to know it.
Okay.
So I was doing some research on TBI, and it said the right side injury is the one that causes processing visual info. Do you still have those kind of long-term effects as far as processing visual info?
I don't.
Okay.
The doctors said that everything about my recovery was opposite of what all the books said.
Wow.
Because a injury on my right side and I'm left-handed, I should not be able to write anymore. Because that everything on the right affects what's on the left. And I was like, well, there was no way. I am ambidextrous, but being left-handed is what I am. So since I didn't know anything else, I just went back to writing with my left hand. And my left side of my body is stronger than my right side, and always was and still is. So as far as in the very beginning of my injury, I would watch movies and I would enjoy it. But if someone said, well, what was it about? I would only be able to recall like the major gist of the story. So I couldn't recall the names of the characters or the or what street or what state. I might not be able to recall. It might be a cold place and I could give you that, but I couldn't give you it was a cold winter's night in Montana. Those fine details I couldn't recall. I'm getting better at it now, but there's still, names I might choose not to try to remember because it's inconsequential in trying to watch a movie. Like, I don't need to know everybody's name. I just know what they do.
Right.
Okay. I had a question for you. What was the harder part for you? Was it the mental or the physical part?
Well, it was the physical. And it was also the most rewarding part, because not being able to walk and just doing all that I could to try to walk every day, try to lift my right ankle off the ground so that I could walk without slipping or tripping. Those were constant focus driven exercises. So the excitement when, yes, I can walk again without a cane, I don't need a walker anymore, that was more of a triumphant moment. Whereas, and other people can see it, so you're getting that encouragement from all around. So mentally, the minor details, like no one knows I can't read, so then it's not really something that is as big as a exciting issue. If now I can read. It's not like I'm gonna shout it out. I'm 40 something years old, so I don't want everybody. Guess what, everybody? I can read now. I don't want that. So I kept that to myself. emotionally though, there's a process that as you're recovering from a brain injury, you, in the very beginning, you're unaware of everything that you're doing. So something may be funny and you'll have like this whole full body expression of laughter. And everybody's like, what? It wasn't that funny. But you don't realize that you're so happy and it was so funny that you're so tickled that you just have to laugh as loud as you can because you're feeling it so much more. It's like you're feeling everything to the 100th degree.
Really?
So all attention is felt and all love is felt to the 100th power. And so the lack of care that I received from people hurt more. Or if someone just no longer wanted to be my friend, and I did lose a lot of friends, it hurt more because I'm just like, well, I couldn't help the fact that I'm no longer who I was. If something happened to me, it's not that I changed on purpose, but losing friends was difficult. Losing, well, the marriage, I kind of knew was over and done with before the accident, but it would have been nice to have a husband care for me the way I needed to be cared for when I don't have any children. So you just expect your spouse to help out. So those emotional issues were harder and heavier. So the opposite of hurt is you want to do something that makes you feel good. So early on, feeling good things was shopping. And I did a lot of that. And for some reason, even though I had a logical mind before the accident, logically, I couldn't understand that, well, you could buy everything on a credit card. I couldn't understand the part about paying it back. So I asked for to help manage my bills because I was like, well, it's not never ending. I have to pay it back. And I had great credit and I was spending and spending. I still have all the bags and everything. And some clothes I can't fit anymore, but I did do a lot of just outwardly expressing of feelings of elation. Like I wanted to do something to make me feel good and also celebrate the fact that I'm here. It's like there was a celebration in my mind. I made it. God chose me to be here for a reason. I gotta show how happy I am. But because I wasn't really dealing with the hurt that I was feeling, I was spending to fill that void. So I didn't need, and I got that help from my aunt.
Okay. So now you I can only imagine that, I mean, as a therapist, between the grief, just the grieving process, as well as losing so much that you probably were feeling depressed at some point. I'm guessing.
That was the worst part about it. I didn't realize I was depressed. I didn't realize that I thought it was just normal. I didn't want to go outside because I didn't want to walk with a limp. I didn't want people to see my limp and I didn't know how. So I just said, I'm happy being at home watching movies all day long. That was depression and I had no clue. But living in the British Virgin Islands, my experience with counselors didn't go too well because I needed therapy to deal with why I didn't like my husband anymore. And the couples counselor, when she spoke with me privately, she shared everything I said with her to my husband, which was a breach of all sorts of HIPAA rules. Like, although we're married, I wasn't sitting with him. You didn't have to, alert him to all that was on my mind so that then I'd have to deal with him one-on-one when I got home. So it was just, I didn't trust anybody to talk to, so I didn't. Okay. So I was able to come back to New York for my annual checkup with my neurologist. And he was asking me how I felt. And I was explaining, he was like, I was wondering when you were going to show signs of depression. And it took 4 years
Wow.
after the accident for me to verbalize and for him to write a script for, I forget what it was, some medication that I stopped taking because I didn't see any effects in the positive. I was like, I'm taking it, I'm still not doing anything.
Okay.
But not doing was my brain coming back to me saying that you should be living a better life than this. Sitting around every day waiting for something to happen is not how you've been. This is not you. So I said, instead of taking this pill that's not helping me figure out what to do, I should just start doing stuff. So I started taking different physical therapy, a different physical therapist. I started meeting up with my friends, talking to people, and getting out of my house. And as a result of that, it was time for a full divorce because I no longer had my husband as a friend. He was just a person who lived there.
So, Asiyah, are you saying that your marriage was in trouble even before the accident?
Oh,
Or did
yes.
it go? Oh, okay. So,
But-
have you seen your ex-husband since your recovery? Are you guys in touch in any way, shape, or form?
I've seen him. Yes, I have. And we are all united with one
I bet
another.
he's sorry he let you get away.
Oh
I
God.
don't care what he's sorry about. I know that life is funny. So I got a call and they were like, Did you hear? Did you hear? He had a stroke and he can't remember nothing. And I was just
Oh
like,
my God.
Wow.
Wow. I can't laugh at that. Oh.
I
Wow.
cried instantly. I was like, I wouldn't want anyone to suffer what I went through. But I was just like, oh, well, that's their problem now. And that's all I said about it. I will pray for his recovery. And I've seen him, but he hasn't seen me since his accident. And I saw him just walking gingerly. I was like, oh boy, he looks old now. But I didn't say anything. But a lot of my friends in the BVI, they were like, girl, is a what? A bitch.
When the tables turn, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's to say that I wish him well. That's all. And I'm happier for not being married. That's for sure.
Right. Absolutely.
So Asiyah, what is your life like now? Like what because obviously a lot of things change. So what is your life like now, and what kind of things just bring you joy and excitement, that kind of stuff?
Well, for me, it was always talking to people and being around people. Hence why I like my jobs, because I was always interacting and learning and just seeing new things. That's always been a joy to me. So now a lot of what I do is a lot of fun things that keep me strong. Like I'm taking karate and I have a new love in my life, and he is a sensei, teaches karate to children and adults. So it took me like 4 months to get strong enough to be in the class. So now that I'm in the class, I'm absolutely loving it. And everyone laughs at me when everyone is running around at the end of the class. As we're finished, do a lap around the class. They're like waiting on me, and my nickname is Ankles. So like, come on, Ankles, come on. And I'm just like, I'll get in there. So it's just fun to share with other people who are suffering. And I found that a lot of people are not aware, with even their little kids, that a lot of times kids may fall, bump their heads, but they're not being tested properly to see if they have a brain injury, because children can express that they can't write because they never could in the first place. They can't tell you what is no longer what it should be because they don't know or can't express it. And I happen to have been in the waiting room with a a mother and her child. And I said, well, what happened? Oh, he got hit by a car and we're here going to the doctor. I was like, well, have you gotten a scan of your son's brain to see if there's any damage? And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, was he hit by the car and fell down and hit his head? She's like, yeah, but he's fine. I said, well, that's exactly what happened to me, and I am not fine. Maybe you should see a neurologist to see if there's further damage, brain damage to your child. And she was like, these doctors don't tell you anything. I would have never thought to check because he's still running around and being rambunctious, but that could have been what I was displaying too. Running around, spending money like crazy. That was me with a brain injury. So I don't know how, but I think more people need to be aware that any kind of injury to the head or fall, or a lot of people falling or tripping or getting hit in sports. A lot of footballers have, what do they call in the football realm? It's not some
CTE
guys, but yes, that one.
All right.
But it's long-term effects of having kind of damage to the brain.
I was actually asked to see, is there a way to go about that? Because I was actually asked recently, because I was in a car accident a while back and had a head injury. And I was asked recently if I ever thought about getting checked, and I denied it. But is there a way to just go about that? Is that something you could just request through your insurance company, or is that something that out of pocket?
It would be through, if you're, I would say that primary care would have to give you a referral to a neurologist to get that in. It's not something insurance people have to deal with. If doctors are recommending you get a scan for your brain because you had there's a reason for it. You had an injury, and it's something that they neglected to do in the interim, in the first place. So it's not something that you have to fight insurance if your primary care doctor is giving you a referral for it.
But you still need to have that conversation with them.
Yes,
right? Okay.
You have to. A lot of times, it depends the relationship you have with your primary care doctor, but they'll ask you because they don't know what you've dealt with. So many different insurance companies are dropping people, and you're getting new insurance who have no history of your backstory. So every new doctor I meet, and when I transferred everything back to America, I had to let everyone know I have a TBI. This is what's happened. These are my doctors, so that I am not slighted in the care that I'm receiving. And you have to be your best advocate. So if you're aware of something, you have to do the talking. Doctors are not looking for more work to do or more patients to fill out.
I have one last question for me. You said you were in a coma for 3 weeks. What was that like? Can you in any way describe that?
I can. And what's funny is I'll say I was in a coma for 3 weeks. My family says, well, you were waking up and talking to us. And I said, I don't remember any of that. All I know is my coma was peaceful. And I remember my best friend singing, and she has a beautiful voice. And I don't know if you know my friend Shahara Jackson.
Yeah, of course. So yes.
He was singing to me in Florida. I remember that. And I remember also before waking up, seeing my grandmother who had passed and running towards her. And she's told, no, sugar dumpling, go back that way. Go back to the people who love you. So that's when I woke up out of my coma, because my grandma said, no, sugar dumpling, go back that way. Wow. So those are the things that I remember. So I remember the other side, and I remember hearing Shahara singing to me.
Wow. So people really can hear you when you're laying in the hospital bed, because I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
You didn't hear me?
No, I thought you said something after that.
Oh, okay. No. I just made that comment. But I guess
I did have a question, real quick. Asiyah, I'm just curious. So you said you had to learn how to read all over again. Now, did you have to go back to the beginning to learn to read? Like, did you have to learn how to sound out letters and like phonics and all of that stuff? Like, what
Well,
was that process like?
it was okay. So I knew I couldn't read. And then I knew that, well, there's a way to sound things out. So the day that I learned I couldn't read, I'm looking at a book and the word t, huh, t, huh. So I knew how to sound it out. Like that didn't leave me. But I was trying to sound out the word the. So what I figured I needed to do was put the what is it called? When you put the words on the screen while you're watching TV. So
Oh,
I'm here
closed caption.
so I can hear what they're saying and seeing the words. So I cheated. I didn't go back to school to learn how to read. I just had
Hey,
to remember what reading was. I had to remember that those words sound like that. I did the cheat book way of learning how to read again. So no, I didn't go back
Smart.
to school. I just figured it out.
Mm,
that's good.
amazing.
That's
Yeah,
good.
that's good. That's
That's
good.
good.
Yeah.
Wow. So see, do you I guess what words would you share to people who either have gone through something like that or maybe a family member? Like I guess what words of encouragement could you share to them or
I
inspiration?
would say, well, for me, I never quit. I always wanted to be the best going into the game. So being the best student in at Rusk was my goal. I wanted to be the best, so I never wanted to make a mistake. I wanted to learn what I had to learn. And if they said, well, you have to review this, I reviewed it. If everything, I'm a good student, that's for sure. But I also don't want to be the worst student. So I would definitely listen to the people who know more than you, but when you don't believe what they have to say about you, you can challenge them. I didn't believe that I wouldn't be better, but they did make you well aware that you will not be what you were. And I didn't want to believe that. So it was a hard lesson to learn that no, I'm not going to be that. But it didn't stop me from aiming for better. So I kept trying to reach a goal that I set for myself. And that would be the one thing. Don't accept nothingness because that's not what you're put here for. If you do have a brain injury or any kind of ailment, just seek the answers to the questions that you have.
Okay.
No question stupid. And I did ask a lot of questions. I was always asking, well, why doesn't this work? Why isn't this? So the would explain to me in doctor speak what was going on with me because I wanted to understand. And that's probably why I've used the subtitles to learn how to read again. Because if this is what I need to see it, I needed to learn by repetition. Because without the repetition, my brain wouldn't catch on. So a lot of times if you say, well, my number is da 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 da, I would have to say in my head da 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 da. And on the third time is when I caught it. And that's what I learned how I everything 3 times. So
Good.
if I it, I write it, I say it. 3 times is the winning, I guess, formula for me.
Okay. All
Well,
right.
see, I didn't know you before. Personally, I didn't know you before the accident, but your story is really just amazing, and you
Yes.
are a walking miracle.
Yes.
And you definitely don't look like what you've been through.
Mm.
Um, and I would dare say that you're better than you were before.
Well,
So take courage in that.
and I didn't tell you guys, I did do a TED Talk. You mentioned that before, but it is available for people who might be listening who would want to hear my recovery and see me years ago where I had to use cue cards to
Right.
read I couldn't remember it at all. And that would be TEDx Roadtown, Asiyah Grant, if
Okay.
anyone Google it.
Okay.
Yeah, I
All
would
right.
definitely check that out.
Okay. Well, well, Asiyah, listen, we want to thank you for joining us. Your story is so inspirational, and I thank you for sharing it because a lot of times people suffer in silence, but you know, you can be a blessing to other people just by sharing your story, as well as I'm sure it's a blessing to you too. You know, to just relive how much progress you've made. So I just really want to thank you for coming and sharing your story and being so transparent with us. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Pat.
Yes.
All right.
And
So
we love a good comeback story.
yes.
We love a good we have overcome story, and you have definitely overcome. So we appreciate, and we know that our listeners and our watchers are going to be helped and encouraged by this.
If I ever took a loss, I learned a lesson. I won't ever think I'm better than the next man. I've been down before to come up, I ain't stressing. Baby, I'm too busy counting.